Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us today for improving customer retention by managing the customer journey. Today, we're pleased to welcome Puhm to host the webinar. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you'd like to tweet us and join the conversation, feel free to use the hashtag customer lifecycle or mention get Amity or Puhm at any point during the webinar if you have questions or anything along that line. Not to worry, we'll be sending the slides in the recording, and we'll make sure we have a long Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Puhm.
Thank you, Matthew, and welcome everyone to today's webinar on improving customer retention by managing the customer journey. My name is Puhm, and I'll be your presenter today. For those of you that don't know me, I have been in the software business for 21 years, building and leading customer success organizations before it was called customer success. My interest and expertise lies in accelerating business growth through a customer-centric approach. I really enjoy that alignment of the business operations to the customer journey because it is by far the most elegant way I've seen in driving revenue and scale. So much so that I've established CX Consulting to help businesses accelerate their growth through CX innovation. So I'm thrilled to be sharing today with you what it means to improve retention by managing the customer journey. So before we dive into best practices, let's just all level set on what customer retention really means. Very simply, customer retention means knowing why your customers bought from you and ensuring you deliver on your commitment to provide what you sold. So why they bought and delivering on your commitment. If you only remember one thing from today's webinar, remember that. Why did your customers buy? We all have to remember that customers specifically chose our products to accomplish their goals. So understand that and help them be successful. If your customers are successful, you'll keep them. So remember, know why your customers bought. Okay, so improving customer retention. I had to laugh when I saw this image and thought it was really appropriate. Who doesn't look at it and feel like they've almost gone to that length to save a customer or two in the past? The good news is that by managing the customer journey, we can change customer retention into a proactive and enjoyable process and avoid running into tactics like this. Indeed, companies that actively manage customers through the journey turn renewals into a non-event and spend the time upselling and cross-selling instead to powerful effect. To illustrate the power of the numbers, I'd like to share an example with you. At Eloqua, for instance, analysis found that every 1% increase in renewal rate meant approximately $10 million cash back into the business. So by addressing the customer experience, not only was retention going to be improved, there would also be more cash available to reinvest into the business. So another compelling reason to improve retention. The numbers will likely be different for your company. However, they are still significant. So regardless, improving retention is good for keeping customers, and it's also good for cash flow. But how do you do it? So Eloqua's customer retention was at an all-time low, and increasingly, customer success managers were chasing one escalation after another, especially with a number of disaster product releases. So today, then, I'll walk you through some of the best practices that we learned in improving customer retention, and I'll share some specific examples of things that you can take away and try with your customers. So first, we'll look at understanding the top renewal challenges so that you're aware of the risks and can mitigate against them with your CS practice. Then we'll look at why it's so important to continually demonstrate value to the customer and how to use metrics and benchmarking effectively as a best practice in customer retention. And thirdly, we'll look at what it means to make a customer successful, specifically how to be a strategic partner and how to effectively communicate with customers. I like to look at top challenges as they provide hints as to where to focus attention when looking at what specifically needs improving. So let's take a look at what the top renewal challenges are with the aim of honing in on some problem areas that you can look to improve on. In 2011, Eloqua conducted a Voice of the Industry survey that revealed the following top 3 renewal challenges. Year 1, user adoption, and didn't deliver. That is, keeping the customers after first year was the most problematic challenge. Ensuring users are continually using the product and deriving value from it was next. And then delivering on the promise made by sales during the sales cycle was the third top challenge. These are still by far the most prevalent reasons for retention issues when I interact with various clients. So let's take a look at each of these individually and review some of the best practices to navigate around them. So in year 1, the challenge you're dealing with is uncertainty. The customer has uncertainty with the product, with your company, and with working with you. Everything is completely new to the customer, and they're still wondering whether they made the right decision in selecting your product. They actually made a bet on your product, believing it's the best one to help them achieve their goals. So their career is actually somewhat on the line as well. They're hoping to be successful with your product. So they want that bet to prove to be a winner. So the best way to mitigate that uncertainty is to get customers using the product right away so they can see some quick wins and build their confidence not only in the product, but in you and the company as well. When I work with clients and look at which challenges affect them the most, I immediately look at some very specific areas of practice in customer success. And when I see year 1 as a problem, I focus on the welcome and customer onboarding programs in place. Onboarding is so critical for establishing the relationship and building trust. So use this phase to get off to the right start. And it can start simply by conducting a welcome call, a call to level set on objectives, set expectations, and to review what the customer can expect in their first year, sets the stage solidly for succeeding quickly in year 1. Definitely use those to your advantage. And then rapid implementations or quick starts are also very effective. These are a couple of intensive days to get the application set up correctly and running so that the customer can start using the product immediately. There's absolutely no reason for them to delay in using the product. And then another effective tool I want to share with you is a success coach program during the first 90 days. So at Eloqua, we had success coaches that would work with the customer, assigned to a customer account for the first 90 days, and they would meet with them weekly as a touch point. And they would review things that could be done in the product to help the customer build an understanding of the product and build their confidence in it. And then they could go off and try their own activities, and then the following week discuss those with the coach. It was really effective in removing sort of any angst associated with using a new product that a customer might have, because every week they knew they could talk to their success coach to help them along. So really take a look at what you can put in place in your organization to help customers in their first year. Let them know what they can expect to see in their first year, and look at some programs that you could put into place, especially in the first 90 days, to have frequent touch points with them. So the aim then to navigate around the year 1 challenge is to focus on quick wins and adoption of the product to establish both that trust in the product and in you. Remember that the customer is still uncertain as to whether they made the right decision, so get them onboarded and using the product as quickly as possible. And then when you do, the results are quite significant. Renewal rates past year 1 can be on the order of 10 to 20% higher, simply because all of that uncertainty about you, the product, and what value they're receiving has greatly been removed. And so they can then start to continually adopt further. Which brings us to the next biggest challenge, is user adoption. That is when users are either slowing down their use of the product, or the customer's business is changing, the product is not an integral part of that change. So seat vacancies or repurposed licenses are starting to increase. And when I see user adoption as an issue, I look into the CS organization's customer success program as a possible area to improve. User adoption indicates to me that the onboarding was successful, but that the ongoing usage and the evolution of the product within the customer's environment is waning for whatever reason. So I look to see what CS is doing to continually evolve and expand the customer's use of that product. I also look at how is customer success demonstrating value to the customer to mitigate the user adoption risk by ensuring that they can demonstrate to the customer the value that they're recognizing and receiving from the product. So the aim to navigate around this challenge then is to focus on managing the customer through the journey and quantifying the value they are seeing from the product. In last month's webinar, we talked about how critical the customer journey is in successful adoption of a product. It is the path to success. Therefore, ensure that your CS organization is operating to support that journey and manage customers to it. And if you build in regular touch points with your customers into your customer success plan, then you can also present and quantify the value that the product is delivering to them on a regular basis. Not only can you use what their objectives are to keep them moving forward, you can also use metrics to encourage them to move forward. And we've all had customers that might not know their objectives. They change their objectives. They don't follow the journey you've outlined, or they veer off it, or they don't recognize the value they are receiving. This is where a well-defined success program is really useful. It will contain milestones that the customer needs to achieve, as well as built-in touch points with you to discuss their process and progress. And then using metrics and benchmarking, you can show customers where they are in relation to their peers to continue encouraging them to do more. And then make recommendations on any gaps you see where they're lagging behind. So here's an example of a success plan that outlines all the various activities that a customer needs in order to be proficient and successful with the product. The CS team would specifically designed it to ensure that there was proficiency and success with the product, and they would use it consistently in every discussion they had with the customer to review their progress. I mean, we all like to see that we're making some sort of progress and visually see some sort of benchmark against that. So this was a really effective way that the customer success team at Eloqua used to get customers to do what they needed to do in order to be successful. And it was also a great opportunity to discuss more advanced features of the product as well to solidify customer adoption along the way. So if customers started to discuss specific challenges they might have had at any one of those activities in the success plan, or highlight what they might want to do in the future, it naturally lends itself to start talking about what other areas of the product could be used, and the success CSM could denote those down and keep those in mind for the customer roadmap and helping them in the long run. Therefore, the goal with user adoption is to manage your customers through their journey by focusing them on their objectives. So ward off the risk of customers veering off the path to achieving their objectives by using a success plan and also the metrics and benchmarking to keep them on track. And make sure that your customer journey process is well defined so that it solidifies the proficiency and usage of your product every step of the way. And quantify that value that your product is delivering on a regular basis so that you can give the customers the ability to compare themselves against the peer, but also recognize the value that the product is delivering. And if you are not building those into your regular QBRs or any other form of formalized CSM or account management processes, I urge you to do so because it is quite effective. When I see a didn't deliver challenge, this is where I start looking into the sales process and how customer expectations are set. We've all unfortunately seen this challenge occasionally. Either the product simply doesn't fit what the customer needs, or the customer chose the product thinking that the technology would fix all their business processes, but they still don't know how to solve the problem. So if this is not caught early enough, it's a big waste of time for both you and the customer, and not to mention that your product will likely be used as the scapegoat for the failure to achieve these results. So the aim to navigate this challenge is to really level set quickly with the customer on why they bought and understand what was promised during the sale. If right from the get-go the product is not a fit, bring sales back in right away to rectify. Better to part ways early with the customer than to try and make the impossible work. And we know that it's always a last resort, and we hate to try to do that, but you'll definitely establish more credibility as a vendor when you do this versus wasting their time achieving something that isn't what the customer wants, and you'll likely be a brand that sticks with them, and they'll look for reasons to bring you in next time at the first opportunity when something does fit. In some cases, it might not be that the product isn't a fit or that sales over-promised, rather the customer starts to veer off course, or that they're losing focus of what their objectives are. And in this case, level setting on the objectives helps in that process. And then you don't necessarily need to switch the product or make that type of decision, but you can then focus on managing the journey so that you both level set on those objectives and are mutually working towards achieving those. So it actually still continues to surprise me that more often or not, customer success does not conduct some form of welcome or expectation with the expectation setting with the customer. We'll often send a welcome note and think, okay, the customer's on their way, but you have to remember from their perspective, they don't know what the next step is in the process. We do intimately because we're living and breathing it, but they don't. So having a transition call with sales or professional services, if it goes to them first before it's handed off to customer success, to welcome the customer is such an easy but really crucial step for making everyone's lives better, especially the CSM's life. It sets the stage for working together with the customer, and it's key to establishing that necessary trust we spoke about earlier. And it also is an opportunity for CS to confirm the objectives as they understand them and let the customer know exactly what they can expect so that they feel they're in good hands and can get started. So level setting is the key goal here in this challenge. Mitigate that risk of an overpromised sales cycle or a misaligned expectation by level setting right at the start of the relationship. Understand what was promised in the sales cycle and confirm that with your customers so you're in sync with the expected results. And then ensure that your customer success practice includes level setting as part of the onboarding just to get it right from the get-go. And then manage the customer journey to keep them focused to those objectives so that they don't veer off course. This really helps to keep the customer accountable as well. So the onus is not solely on customer success to move them forward, but because you're keeping them accountable to their goals, they need to be active participants in achieving those goals. So let's take a poll. Which of the following is the top renewal challenge for your organization? Is it year one, that you have significantly more churn in the first year than you do in following years? Is it user adoption, that lack of adoption is a leading reason for defections later on, and didn't deliver, that there was a mismatch in expectations of the product fails to deliver? Or perhaps there's another reason within your organization. All right. So it looks like the majority of you, or a big chunk of you, had said that user adoption was the key challenge, which is great news that sales is not completely out of sync, and that looks like you have really good onboarding processes in place as well. So again, it's on the user adoption side. Take a look at what your customer success plans are like. How are you continually evolving the usage, and what do you do with customers in the second, third year to really focus on their roadmap and build a long-term roadmap for their success? So now that we know what the top renewal challenges are, and we have some tips on how to navigate around them, let's focus on the best practices for improving retention, specifically demonstrating value, and then later we'll take a look at making customers successful. I love this cartoon to me it's completely so accurate. I mean, how often have you willingly and without hesitation paid for something because it continues to deliver value? It makes customer retention and renewals almost a no-brainer. So making sure that the customer sees the value it really is key, and it does make your job easier. So how do you demonstrate value? The most effective way is definitely with numbers. Therefore, we'll look at the best practices of using data with customers to demonstrate tangible business value, as well by providing you with the leading indicators as to when customers are heading into problems so that you can be a lot more proactive. I really strongly feel that metrics are the customer success organization's best friend. They're the only way a customer success is ever going to be able to move from reactive firefighting to proactive customer success. I personally learned this lesson really well in 2008 when I was made the VP of Customer Satisfaction at Dave Software. The CEO asked me to lead the newly formed group, and he talked to me about this concept that for every $1 he had to pay a field sales rep to bring in a new logo, he only had to pay pennies on the dollar to upsell and cross-sell to happy and successful customers. So he said, yeah, I want you to know everything you need to know about the customers so that we can make them successful, and that they also find us really easy to do business with, because if they find us easy to do business with and successful, they're never going to leave. So I actually started to compile all of this data, if you can believe it, into Excel before applications like Amity even existed. And any sort of data I could collect on the customer that would provide me with any sort of insight was like gold for me. And then later on, I started to use reporting in Salesforce to create what I call the stoplight report. I used a real simple approach of red, yellow, and green to allow us to build risk profiles to understand what top indicators were for defections and what we could do about that. And we started off quite simply with some of the data that we could manage to get, which was usage data, support tickets, renewal dates, and renewal amounts. All this type of information and simply just even a handful of metrics gave us an indication of what if a customer was in a healthy or an unhealthy zone. And then I started to conduct daily stand-up meetings with the team so that we could take a look at what we needed to do, who was a red account, who was a yellow account, and what we needed to do to make sure that we could change those at-risk accounts to healthy customers. So now with the advent of all these customer success tools, such as Amity and applications, it makes the job a lot easier. But it's still the key message is that data and that insight is so key to helping you move to become more proactive. At Eloqua, I also created the first data analyst role. And so this role was specifically responsible for reviewing customer metrics and then reaching out to help when customers needed that. And so that was the first step in becoming more proactive. And instead of waiting to see that customer name on a list of a red account. By starting to look at these risk profiles that we built and understanding what was a healthy and unhealthy customer, we could start to see when they were trending out of the healthy zone and reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed that you're doing X, Y, and Z in the product. Can I help you? What can I do to assist in making this easier for you? And we could often veer customers off path. And so that was our first attempt at really starting to slow down that firefighting. But all this, the point being here is that the better you know and understand your customers, the easier it is to make them successful. So use metrics to help your customers win and provide advance warning when they don't. Identify jeopardy accounts through hosted data sources. Develop leading indicators of successes and challenges so that you can use that to manage the workload of your CSMs to addressing customer challenges. And then build in risk profiles to understand what the top indicators are of defections. And then look, how can you continually improve your customer success program to mitigate or remove those reasons. So if the metrics can help CS proactively drive customers forward, what data encourages customers to move forward on their own? It's benchmarking. And it's great that customer success is there and moving them along, but you also want customers to be motivated to move forward so that it's a team effort. So using objective data to give customers the ability to measure themselves against their peers is a really effective strategy to motivate customers to do more with your product. When you show them how they compare to their relevant peer group, you encourage their continued usage and for them to do more. I mean, it's human nature. We all like to know how we're doing, and customers are not any different. So use this to your advantage to get customers to do what you need them to do in order for them to be successful. The most effective way I've seen benchmarking being used is in QBRs or in annual reviews a few months prior to the customer renewal date. So it really helps to solidify the progress the customer has made and make them feel really good about it. But as importantly, you're reminding them of all the value that they're receiving from the product shortly before the renewal period, so that you're removing any objections of why they should renew. You're actually also arming them with information to provide to their superiors or anyone that might need to approve the budget for your product by arming them with data that they can take to show that what they're receiving in terms of benefit from the product. So specifically look to provide metrics on how they perform. Provide a gap analysis to show areas for opportunity, where they might be lagging in the industry and what they can do to improve that. That encourages them to do things that maybe you're having difficulty getting them to do. And then also deliver recommendations and opportunities for that improvement. Set them up for opportunities to succeed, and also and give them best practices and tips that have worked for other successful customers. So if your CSM or your account management processes do not consist of regularly reviewing benchmark data with customers, make sure you build these into your QBRs or other key meetings. So let's do the next poll. How mature is your organization's use of data in demonstrating value to the customer? Is it missing? You don't use the data? Is it ad hoc? Customer success uses data when necessary to save accounts, and we've all done that. Repeatable. CS uses data regularly to identify jeopardy accounts and reacts accordingly. Or is it systemic, that you actually use data regularly to demonstrate value and you provide proactive recommendations well in advance to help them veer back onto the correct path? So look, again, the majority, or at least half of you, almost half of you, said it was ad hoc, and the rest of it was actually pretty fairly well evenly distributed. So again, the advice I would give is look at what are ways to start identifying which metrics best denote customer health, and use those as leading indicators to provide prioritization on what customers to help out. And then for benchmarking, look at your most successful customers and identify what they had in place to be successful, and use that as a template of sorts to identify gaps of what customers need to improve, and then discuss those gaps with customers regularly when you meet with them. The final set of best practices are around making the customer successful. I mean, it goes without saying that when your customers are successful, they don't typically look elsewhere. They do stay loyal. So create opportunities for your customer to be successful. In my blog last week, I talked about my experience getting a new front door for my house, and I thought it's obviously not directly related to software, but it's so relevant in terms of being a strategic partner. And just briefly, I needed to get a new door, and it wasn't a customized standard fit. I couldn't understand why something that would be that simple was so difficult to get a quote, and I would be discussing this with everybody, and they were not explaining to me what the challenges were, and they'd go off and they would provide me with these quotes that were, it's not even the dollar amounts that were weird, it was the size of the door or designs that I didn't even ask for were completely coming in differently. And so the third vendor that I went to was the only one that actually sat me down, and before he started to ask me exactly what I wanted to do or start telling me what needed to be done, he actually explained what the challenges were. And once I understood that, it sort of just kind of, I had an aha moment about what the challenges were, and now I could actually understand the constraints I was working with and be able to partner with him to come up with the best solution. So in only 20 minutes of him sitting down and explaining to me what he could do and how we could get my dream door, he actually established so much confidence of him in me, and then I decided to go forward with him without even building a quote. And so that's what you want to do with your customers. You want to build that in, really understanding what they're trying to accomplish in their business and helping that achieve them, and listening to their needs and speaking directly to those needs is in a meaningful and useful way to them, is the way that you're going to make customers successful. And it's actually going to be the most efficient way to do it as well, because you're not going to have to guess about everything you need to do with the customer. You are going to be just as focused on the customer's objectives and what they need to get done as they are, and you can efficiently work together to achieve that. So how do you become a strategic business partner versus simply a vendor? You want to collaborate on that customer roadmap. You want to provide a long-term view to the customer for revenue production. And you want to create opportunities for a customer to be successful and measure against these objectives. And then always show the customer the future roadmap and how they can continue to get better with their service. So look for what are they trying to achieve, not just in this year, but what are they trying to look in the long term with your product. And try not to overload and confuse them up front, and give them the right information they need to know, but give them a bit of a vision of where you can take them and what life will look like in 2 or 3 years with your product. Set that excitement, set that vision for them, and then make sure you're building into the plan that you're working with them to actually achieve that. And have conversations about how the product will help out in these ways when it's appropriate and at the appropriate time, so that they're absorbing that information and they're able to successfully incorporated into their business operations. So conduct that level-setting meeting we spoke about earlier to understand your customer's objectives, and then use tools like a 90-day onboarding program and the customer success plan to incorporate that customer's roadmap to success in the overall plan. And then target content based on role, not a generic customer. At every CS org I've ever led, I've actually created a customer enablement / customer marketing function to address the strategic messaging. And on a side note, it's actually also a very effective means to scale the CS organization. So looking for ways to automate communication effectively, or the community to nurture and help each other, is a really effective way to scale your customer success organization and speak to the individual users at your customer. So at Eloqua, we use nurture campaigns based on actual personas, and the community Topliners platform, where the material was specifically created for those various types of users to nurture customers along at the right time of their journey. We had customers actually select what they might be trying to accomplish with the product, and then we built those nurture campaigns to deliver that specific content at the right time, not overload them all at front. And so that was also just another way to augment and supplement the actual one-on-one interaction with the CSM on moving them forward in the journey. We also had a lot of extra information for them that was really relevant at the time when they needed it, and relevant to the role and what they were trying to do. So use tools such as the community platform, where you've got a whole bunch of users there that can help each other out, share their success stories in addition to your CS program. Look to message directly to users. Know the individual audience versus messaging to the company. Also segment events based on roles, so that your training, webinars, best practice discussions are really targeted to them. And then use the metrics that we talked about previously to determine when, how, and what specifically to communicate. So for the final poll today, how advanced would you say your organization is in deploying strategic partnering and messages? Either you're reactive with your customers and you communicate when need be. You provide customers with a success plan for the year and you communicate accordingly to move them along in their journey. Or you're collaborating with customers on their long-term roadmap and then use communication strategically to help them achieve their goals. All right, so the majority of you said that you are still reactive with customers. So look for ways within your customer success program to build a partnership with customers and really have look at what their roadmap is and how to move forward. So to summarize, to proactively improve customer retention, you must understand why the customer bought, and then you need to deliver on your commitment to provide what was sold. Listen to what your customer wants to achieve, and then simply help them achieve it. Use your customer journey to navigate the risks of the top renewal challenges. Use data to demonstrate to the customer the value they're receiving from your product, and deploy strategic partnering and messaging with the customer to help them win. As long as your customers are successful in realizing value, they have no reason to leave. Again, remember, if you only take one thing away from today, know why your customers bought. So what can you take away today to get started on improving customer retention? I've outlined 4 takeaway questions for you to answer. Use these to assess how effectively your operations are set up to improve retention. And for those of you who would like to discuss your specific situation around the topics presented, I'm offering a free 1-hour consult to today's webinar participants to discuss these questions. If you'd like to take advantage of this, please contact me at kia@kiacx.com to arrange for your consult. So I'm in the business of accelerating company growth through CX innovation. I use methodology that I've refined over 21 years of experience building and growing CS organizations. I've made all the mistakes. Let me help you avoid them. Let me help you establish a successful, sustainable CS practice at scale. Thank you all today for joining me, and keep keeping those customers and have fun.
Great, Kia, thank you very much. My wrist is sore from taking so many notes. That was great content. Thank you for doing that. Everyone on the webinar, my name is Phillip. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Amity, and we provide a customer success automation platform to do everything that Kia was just talking about. I loved your quote about companies that actively manage the customer journey stop focusing on turnarounds and put their attention on expansion and renewals. I think that's the secret sauce right there, and that's what Amity helps our customers with. If you'd like to see the Amity platform in action, just go to our website and sign up for a demo, or send me an email. I'm paul@getamity.com, and I'd be happy to arrange that for you. Thanks for everyone for coming out, and now we're going to have Q&A. So if you have any questions, go to the bottom of your Ready Talk widget and put in your questions. Okay. Okay, our first question is about threats to customer adoption. When customers veer off course, how do you approach customers who have done this without calling them out on it? The roadblock in this case is the customer. How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually that is why objectives and getting that level setting and syncing up on the objectives and getting mutual agreement to that is so key. So what I do is look at keeping the customer accountable to the objectives. They're the ones that looked for the product, came in and decided to use your product to solve the problem. So they obviously have goals that they want to achieve. And so at the very beginning, before you even start with them, when you sync up and you really clearly understand each other of what your objectives are going to be, then when they do veer off course, reminding them of the objectives that they agreed to, they looked you in the eyes and actually agreed to that, is a way to get them to self-recognize that they need to get back on track. And so if you very diplomatically can get them back to those objectives and seeing those, and then explain why the recommendations you're making helps them get there, and even better yet, if you have data or benchmarking to show how other customers had the same challenge and then got there to achieve the same metrics, you're going to be successful there.
Great. A great question is, I work for a company that uses a systematic approach for working with their customers, but I'm their first CSM, and the CSM position is new. What advice would you give me?
Wow. Now the advice specifically on improving retention or how to build a position?
Whichever one you want to answer.
Okay. So I guess if you're the first CSM in the organization, then I would assume that it's obviously very new in the organization, the concept of customer success. And so there are a lot of things that you can do to get started and start to build this understanding of metrics is spend time with the customers. Just really understand what's working for customers and what's not, and look at it as an evolving process of developing the methodology and then making that into a repeatable process as you start to get data points on what's successful and what's unsuccessful. But really just talking to the customer, being with them, trying to understand their goals and helping them achieve it is the best advice, and then you'll start to learn from there.
Great. So a few people that are asking how do they sign up for the 1-hour consultation.
Okay.
Do you just want to give your email address for those people?
Yeah, it's kia@kiacx.com. Send me an email, and then we can schedule that.
Great. I've read that CSM shouldn't use the label check-in meetings for checkups with clients. Any suggestions for names for monthly meetings to review progress?
Interesting that you've heard that. I think, you've got your quarterly business reviews that you might be doing. You might also have monthly success calls. So what's also really important at the beginning when you're setting expectations is to show them what the first year will look like. And I showed an example on one of the slides of what the first year with Ellis will look like. And so you can call them customer success check-ins and then meet up with them. But if you let the customer, what I've found is that's very effective is if you tell the customer up front just when they've signed and the momentum is the greatest to get started and they're really excited, and you tell them that this is going to happen, they just take that as the gospel and they put those in the calendar, and you can start checking in with them.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Here's a question. My team has been playing with the idea of using renewals as an opportunity to set goals with our legacy customers who might have been mismanaged or sometimes forgotten. And do you have any suggestions for how to get them thinking about what they want from the product? Often our contact has changed from the person who originally signed on, so we lose the original focus.
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I think it's a great idea to use a meeting before the renewals to start level setting. Obviously, you want to do it well in advance of the renewal date, have enough runway with that. I would start by simply having a meeting to ask what their business objectives are. Understand what they're trying to achieve in their business, not necessarily with your product, just what are the top priorities for your customer contact and that organization, so that you understand what challenges they're facing and kind of can get into their world and the head of what they're thinking. And then you can start to draw the connection between how your product is going to solve their problem. So as soon as you can draw that connection between what your product is going to do to help them achieve their yearly goals that they have to talk to their boss about, you've grabbed their attention and piqued their interest, and then you can start to talk about plans to achieving that and working together to achieving that.
Great, thank you. If a CSM is introduced after implementation, isn't there a chance of not identifying the business objectives at the start of the project?
Well, of course there is in terms of them being new, but I guess in terms of, this always happens, there's a lot of switches on account, and so it's not always, in a non-perfect world, it doesn't always happen that you're going to know exactly what the objectives are. Or actually, a lot of times, the customer's objectives are continually evolving and changing, which can be quite frustrating for us as CSM professionals. But the best practice or the key would be to as soon as you're on an account, you want to understand that. So if you need to get that information from sales, or if you're doing an introduction call and you're meeting the customer for the very first time, even if the customer has already been a customer for a long time and is just getting to know you, ask them. That's an opportune time to say, what are their objectives? What are they trying to achieve? And use that opportunity to learn that. You also I would encourage everybody on regular touch point calls, not necessarily every call, but on QBRs, you could start having a standing agenda item on the QBRs where everyone just syncs up again to make sure that the objectives that are still in place are still the ones that everyone's working towards. I mean, businesses are so agile and moving all along, it's completely normal for objectives to change. So it's not a bad thing for you to reset every time, once a quarter with the customer, just to make sure. It can be a 5-minute or 2-minute discussion if nothing's changed, or it could actually significantly be an important part of that discussion.
Okay, question, what recommendations do you have for managing the relationship with your sales team when the perception is that every customer deserves to be over-serviced?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the challenges that I've often faced was, sales just wants you to do everything and anything for their specific customer to make sure that they're successful. But you need to look at the collective customers and make sure that everyone's getting a great experience. So what I started to look at was what was the customer success organization, or what I look at companies is what do customer success organizations offer in their program to their customers that is really value add. And you want to use that as a key differentiator against your competition, and to be able to prove out how much value you really are contributing to customers through your CS organization. And so if you start to articulate that and provide that to the sales folks can actually be part of messaging that to the customer way up front before they even meet you, which just provides a really nice, seamless, and consistent experience. But it does another thing in a I don't want to say sly, but in a very clever manner, which is educate your sales organization as well as to how you are going to manage customers. And I think it's really important to educate when they see how much customer success does for customers, and they need to understand that customer success is responsible for, in aggregate, all of the customers, and that if they start to, focus on only a few or whichever ones that sales wants them to run towards, they actually do more damage for the company in the long run. So it's in everyone's best interest if customer success runs their operations and uses metrics to know which customers to deal with proactively and when, and explain that to sales so that they understand and trust what you're doing. And then they have that information also to use as a competitive differentiator.
Great, thanks, Kia. Okay, we're at the end of the webinar. I'd really like to encourage everyone on the call. Kia is so darn good at her job. Sometimes it just seems like magic. Take advantage of her offer. Spend an hour with her. I guarantee you won't regret it. It'll be absolutely worth your time. And speaking of magically, we have another webinar scheduled for Tuesday, April 26th at 1 p.m. and continuing on working on the customer journey. Next time we're going to be talking about accelerating customer expansion by focusing on the customer journey. And if it's anything like today, it's going to be amazingly awesome. Kia, thank you very much for putting this on today. I know I got a ton of value. I'm sure the audience got a ton of value, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Great. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out. And if you'd like to see how the Amity product can turn your customer success team into a proactive customer success team, just drop us a demo request. We'd be happy to do that. And we'll see you at the next webinar in April. Great. Thank you.